Oh, Missouri. Awesome. Missouri in the house. Well, welcome, welcome. Um, Upstate New York. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I just want to be respectful of everybody's time. And obviously this will be recorded for anybody that happened to miss the call, but I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So like I said, welcome to the call. My name is Ted Hannock. I'm an integrative health practitioner. I'm also an overcoming self-sabotage coach. So I help people with health and wellness. I help people with mindset and overcoming their own self-limiting beliefs. And I'm also, I'm just passionate about water. I came across Kangen water about 2.5 years ago, and it fundamentally shifted my understanding of water. And prior to that, I just want to give you a little bit of history. Like I used to actually buy bottled water. Well, first, I used to drink tap water. I didn't know any better, so I drank tap water for a long time. Then I drank bottled water. Then I got a big Berkey. Then I got a reverse osmosis system, and I had a pitcher before that, like a gravity pitcher. And then I got the Enagic machine. And I was just blown away by Enagic. And then I started learning about, through Joseph, I started learning about proper filtration. So it's been really an amazing journey to learn about filtration, to learn about hydration. I mean, I thought if I was doing all the supplementation, the exercise, all these different things, I thought I knew pretty much everything I needed to know when it came to health and wellness. I figured the water thing was just checked off the box. And when I started taking a deeper dive into what's in our municipal water and then the living nature of electrolyzed reduced water, I've just been completely captivated by water ever since. And we're really fortunate to have Joseph Borowy on the call here. I mean, he's got over a decade experience in water. He's got a fascinating story. He actually started, this is Kevin Trudeau's book. And I'd love for him to talk about this because this is a book that I actually picked up at like a thrift shop, like 6 years ago. And Kevin Trudeau is a fascinating guy, and his book really blows the lid off of conventional medicine and all the things that we're told cause disease state. And Joseph, obviously that book really influenced you, and you have a diverse background. I'm really thankful and grateful to have you here, and just wanted to have an opportunity for you to just tell people basically your story. How did you get involved with filtration and kind of your health journey?
Yeah, well, I found that book kind of in a similar way that you did. I think it was, I can't remember if I was 18 or 19, but it was 2007-ish. And I was like at a bookstore for no reason except that in this part of Baltimore where I'm from, in Towson, they had it set up where there was like a kind of below grade parking. And the fastest way, if you were in like the Towson Town Plaza to get there, was cutting through Barnes and Noble. So that's the reason I was walking through a bookstore one day, and that book was just sitting on like a center like display. And it was just one, I had no reason to be there. And it just hit me in a weird way. And growing up in school, I'd never read a book except for that I had to read in school. You know what I mean? Reading I could do, but it just, like, math came easily for me, but reading was like I had to push myself to do it. I could do it well, but I didn't like it as much. That was the first book I ever read voluntarily at age like 18 or 19, cover to cover, finished it in like a few days. And I don't know if you remember, in that book, there's chapter 6, this like now infamous chapter 6, where there's just like a list of like hundreds of things to do to get your health better. Eat organic, get chiropractic adjustments, get massages, do cleanses, get colonics, take supplements, filter your air and filter your water. And then there was a section about filtering your water. And I implemented a lot of those, see a naturopath. I went on vacation in Maui, and I saw a building with a naturopath. So I just like insta booked my first naturopath experience from that book because of a vacation I had right after. But that, like, it was just weird. Out of all those things, for whatever reason, the water thing just stuck, and it just fomented into this natural obsession for me. And again, this is 2007-ish. So it's not like it is now, with the internet being full of water filtration options and that space being very crowded. Back then, there just wasn't that much stuff, available. So it wasn't that hard to basically buy everything and try it, back then.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that was kind of decent. So that's what I did. I just started buying stuff and trying it. Not just drinking water filters, but shower filters too was part of my natural interest. And back then, there was a company that doesn't operate in the US anymore called the Wellness Filter. And they had a drinking water system, and then they had a shower filter. and it was like a filter for the drinking. It had like a carbon filter, and then it had this other component that was a bunch of Japanese minerals like stacked, that in a specific order. There was layers of like magnetite and tourmaline that created like a field. And that filter, both their shower filter and their drinking water filter, was it just had something that like got me obsessed. And what that something was it filtered the water, but then it had something beyond the filtration. It was like I felt a living energy from that product that was something beyond just the contaminants being removed from filtration. And that's really when I got set off on like just obsession and trying everything, is when I tried that one. That one was actually mentioned. There's a second edition of that book called More Natural Cures, and that product, along with a couple others, actually mentioned in that book. So that's really what set me off. And after a while, it was like I would buy stuff and then want to talk to the manufacturers or the whoever was selling them, and then just out of that, I would get dealer accounts, with some of these companies. And they weren't that, some of them were like in the early days of Aquasana, which is pretty prominent now. It was really easy to get an affiliate account or a dealer account. Eventually got rid of their dealer account altogether. But in the early days, it was like the wild, wild west, sort of, in that space, outside of like, Home Depot stuff,
Yeah.
So that's how I got started. And in that process, I think Aquasana was my first dealer account. And I didn't do a ton with them, but they had a good filter for that time, And then a little further down the road, I got introduced to Multipure in 2009, I believe. And I've been with them ever since. I went through periods where I was dealing them and other filters concurrently. And then over the years that followed, all of those other companies had problems, or I just had situations where the filters really didn't work that well. Like if you had pretty good tap water, they would seem fine. But then when you had challenging water, they weren't. And when I learned more about the construction of water filters and the performance, the key for performance is over the lifespan of the filter life, not on the first gallon. That's when I really kind of fine-tuned it. I was a dealer for Berkey for some years. And then I had two different instances where there were recalls. And one of the recalls was like my black Berkey filter was disintegrating in the tank, and the other one was like my black Berkey, like the plastic base and the black filter just kind of went like that and just came off. And the customers call me, "Hey, I bought your Berkey filter and my water tastes like weird glue chemicals right now."
Well, maybe since you're on the Berkey, I mean, I know I talk to people about their water all the time, and the Berkey comes up like everybody. I own a Berkey. Everybody owns a Berkey. So I'm really curious from your perspective, like if you can give us some insight into the effectiveness of a Berkey. Is the Berkey, in your opinion, is it a good filter? Like it has like the stuff on the top, it's the stuff on the bottom. Is it effective at what it markets itself as?
I mean, I think it's better than like a Brita, or something. Like it's better than like a granular pitcher, but it's not up there with, I wouldn't use one. I'm not about to go on a camping trip and dip that in a lake or a stream and drink that water like people do. There is silver impregnated in the Berkey, but it is silver. The silver is probably maybe doing okay for bacteria, but I don't think it's killing viruses that are in the water, and the one time I got sick on a backpacking trip, it was a virus. So I'm not about to be using it the way people think they can be used. And I just think they're mediocre and overpriced for like a home filtration option. I know the gravity format is convenient, but I just haven't found any gravity filters that I would personally use regularly. I really like. Every single one of them that I've looked at, every single one has the kind of testing that I consider, I don't know if fraudulent is the word, but like, misleading, every single one of them that I've seen has that kind of testing. I haven't seen like an NSF certified gravity filter that's getting the tougher contaminants like volatile organics, mercury, lead, chloramines. I just haven't seen that.
Maybe
So
you can explain. I mean, this is education for me too. Like, what does NSF certification mean? Because I know some companies, like a lot of us on this call, are working with Enagic. We help people with electrolyzed reduced water, and then it's like, well, you want to recommend a pre-filter, and a lot of people go towards the ion faucet pre-filters because they're NSF certified. Well, what does that mean? And maybe could you shed some light on ion faucet? And is that a good solution for people?
yeah, so it's important. It's a good question, and this is where it's really easy to mislead people when it comes to NSF certification. There's different layers of it. When I say NSF certification, I'm talking about performance certification, which means there's testing protocols that test that filter's ability to filter out a contaminant at a high concentration, several times what you're likely to ever see in real life. And then not just the beginning of that cartridge lifespan, but at the last gallon. So when you get a NSF performance certified filter, like the Multipure Aquaversa, you have the Aquaversa, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that one's NSF certified for 750 gallons. That means every single contaminant on the list passed a tough protocol for 1,500 gallons, and they cut that number in half. So layers of redundancy. The other kind of NSF certified, which you see on a lot of products at Home Depot even, and not just filters, is material safety, which means, you could have an NSF certified like brass fitting, which means that brass has no lead that's going to hurt you. And that is what the products that are on Ion Faucet have. And I'm telling you, I mean, I deal with this regularly, but you call them and you say, are your stuff NSF certified? They say yes. And they know that you're really mean, are they performance certified? But they are knowingly giving you a technically correct answer that's really not what you're asking. So they're talking about material safety. None of their cartridges are NSF certified that I've seen the last time I checked. And and some of them will have the little blue stamp on there. And if you read the text under the blue stamp, it says for material requirements only. So that's a classic example of what's unfortunately common in the water filter field, which is misleading claims and just overinflation of what units can do. When you look at the way they're sold on Ion Faucet, they're not like, necessarily terrible filters, but they're not the best option. And when you have this format where you can mix and match cartridges in a generic housing, it's definitely not NSF certified, because with NSF, the whole system with that cartridge has to get certified. So you can't just be swapping in random stuff based on someone's zip code and then get an NSF certification. There's one real cartridge that maybe not every single time, but the majority of time at Ion Faucet you'll see, which is, I'm going to share my screen here, Ted.
Go for it.
Okay. So let's see. Can't move this menu. Yeah. Okay. So this is the one that if you call them and give them your zip code, which means they look up in the EWG database, what that says is in your water, which is tested at the municipal source and not at your faucet. And there's probably dozens or hundreds of miles between your pipe between your source and your faucet. So I'm kind of saying that I'm not the biggest fan of that approach. I don't think it really does that, adds a lot of value to people's experience. But
so wait, hold on for a second. So if you're saying if I pull somebody's EWG water report, that's not, are you saying it could be ostensibly worse at their house, or what are you saying there?
It's certainly not going to be better at their house.
Okay.
But there's a good chance it could be worse,
Yeah.
And I mean, if you've ever seen pictures of like water main pipes, I mean,
Yeah, they're horrible.
Yeah, they have like inches of gunk around the sides, So yeah, it's certainly not going to be any better. I like looking at the if I'm looking for a customer, I'm looking at their municipal water support, municipal water system water quality report, and the most recent one is kind of the best I think that's available, barring you paying for a test on their actual tap water. That's the best. That's like $200 at least though. And I don't think, unless there's a specific concern, I don't think it's a good investment in most cases. So that's what I do is I look up their water quality report, the most recent one. Usually that's more accurate data than the EWG because that can lag if, it doesn't necessarily update every year on that one.
Okay.
And that varies too. I mean, just some municipalities just test for more stuff than others. Some do only what they have to. If you look at Austin, Texas's water quality report, it really doesn't look that bad, but in real life, that's really, really bad water. So it's still, the real way is if you wanted to pay for a test. But in majority of cases with a good system like the Multipure, that's very thorough, you just can avoid that, except in rare cases. But this is the cartridge that if you went to ion faucet, most of the solutions they would offer you, whatever mix of 2 or 3 they put together, would have this in the mix most likely. I've talked to the owner of this company. It's an okay filter. It's just that these claims are inflated. The chloramines and chlorine, it's certainly capable of. The lead, as far as the heavy metals, the mercury, those things it's capable of. And I went down a long rabbit hole on this to find that their parent company is actually called Aqua Guidance. And this is IATMO. Now, for a smaller company like this, an NSF full certification is not going to make sense because it's like $150,000, I think, for a 5-year cycle, and they're just not that big. So what they do is they go to the WQA, which Enagic goes to. Enagic's WQA certified for chlorine, and the whole actual like K8 is, So the WQA is one option. They test to the actual NSF protocols. Another one is IATMO, which is this International Association of Plumbing, and they test to the real NSF protocols. Those are the real 3 what you look for when it's performance tested. If they're a smaller company, they'll do this most likely because it's still good and it's cheap. It's a lot cheaper than like, a real NSF certification. But, so what it was actually tested for, this is just a brand, that's a private label brand for ion faucet. This is the parent company. It's tested for chloramines and chlorine, which is good. Key to note though, is tested at ½ gallon a minute. And I doubt anyone that buys that is running. They're probably running it at twice that, most likely, which can affect the performance. But the lead and mercury as well, again at that ½ gallon a minute rate. ½ gallon a minute, is certainly realistic through that. But I think in a lot of cases, just from people I talk to, it's usually running at, it's just designed where it can run at way more than that. If you run it way more than that, you get better flow rate, which is nice, but the performance changes. Every aspect of the equation, changes the cartridge's performance. With the NSF certification, when they're testing it at ½ gallon per minute, you're seeing it passes for those contaminants, the NSF protocols at that flow rate. So, we saw mercury, lead, chlorine, chloramines, but you didn't see herbicides, pesticides, VOCs, glyphosate, pharmaceuticals, all the other heavy metals, trihalomethanes, chromium, nitrates. You certainly didn't see fluoride. This is the norm basically with water filters. It's an okay filter. I think it's what I would consider kind of a mid-grade filter, and there's a lot of filters in that space, like the Aquasana non-RO ones I would consider to be kind of in this same category. I don't use them, and like, again, it's like, if this is an option ion faucet, nothing wrong with that if it's being kind of represented for what it's actually capable of,
Mm-hmm.
But this is the problem. So the fluoride in particular,
Let's talk about fluoride. That comes up a lot.
Yeah. So everyone wants a non-reverse osmosis filter that takes out fluoride, and it just isn't there right now. There isn't one I've seen where it can pass the NSF protocol for fluoride or even anything close to that at anything like these numbers, 85% for a meaningful number of gallons. The owner of this company sent me a lab test he didn't publish, where they did 500 gallons of water with nothing but fluoride, And it did, I think, like 85% over, I think, 500 gallons at a slow flow rate. And then he did another one where it was Chicago tap water, and it looked pretty good, but it was running at 0.3 gallons a minute, which isn't even enough to really make your Enagic work. I think you'll get the error message if it's that low. So in real life, the other alkaline minerals in the water, calcium, magnesium, and anything, even the chlorine actually will compete with a filter's ability to remove fluoride. And the reason is fluoride really acts in water like a mineral more than it does a contaminant. And fluoride does occur naturally and in usually small concentrations, 0.1 to 0.2 parts per million. And I'm of the opinion that, you get spring waters that have that concentration naturally. I'm not concerned about naturally occurring fluoride in tiny amounts. Even Victor Schauberger's work back at the turn of the 20th century described his ideal water out of like a mountain spring, and it had a tiny amount of fluoride in it because that's what he saw usually happen in the best spring waters. But when we're talking about fluoride at the municipal source, that's not what we're really talking about. We're talking about added fluoride and probably not the same form that's occurring naturally. So the big question everybody wants is, how do you get that out without reverse osmosis? Because RO has all the downsides, right? It wastes a lot of water. It stripped all the minerals. The water comes out acidic and mineral deficient. So people want to avoid it. And this is where this product really has its niche. And it's just not there in my experience. I haven't seen really real world evidence to say it's getting like anything close to this level of fluoride reduction in real life over a meaningful number of gallons. Maybe the first couple dozen. And the other one, Ted, you and I were talking about this, but another ones you see are bone char and activated alumina as fluoride medias. And actually, Ion Faucet, I think they have a bone char cartridge, don't they? Yeah, they have a bone char cartridge right here. So by the way, in case you had any questions about it, bone char is bone char. It's cow bones roasted to a char and ground up, which, if you any vegetarian in the house, probably not happy about that, But the challenge with that and activated alumina, which is another one, is that you, Ted?
No, hang on.
Okay.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Okay. So the challenge with that and activated alumina is you get really good performance on the first few gallons. This is what the Multipure executive has been telling me for a long time. And you just don't see it in American literature that much because it's just so easy to put out a filter and say it takes out fluoride and sell a mediocre product for a good price. And people are so happy they get a fluoride filter. Pitchers do this. Berkeys have the fluoride attachments. It's just so easy to put that up, throw it on Amazon, throw on Google ads, and just sell the crap out of them for a cheap product. And there's going to be very little, or if any, repercussions for that. In other countries like New Zealand and Australia, where they're really strict, their government agencies, this is where I've seen most of the stuff publishing what the Multipure kind of in-house team has been telling me for a long time, because they get the fluoride question all the time. But on the first, let's see, new bone, first of all, the effectiveness is similar to that of activated alumina, requires a low pH. That's the key with these, is that these are medias that can remove fluoride in low pH environments. That's when they work. So if you had a municipal setting where you had naturally occurring very high fluoride and you needed to bring it down to make it safe for even US government levels, then you get your source water, you do a chemical reaction to make it very acidic, you run it through this media, take the fluoride out, then you do more, probably add in bicarbonate or something to bring it back up to slightly alkaline. And that's how you handle that. That's where these work. That's not your water coming out of your tap, though. It's going to be slightly alkaline, most likely. So bone char claimed to reduce up to 90%. And that's what you see a lot. We found laboratory tests after 10 gallons, it dropped from 80 to 50. After just 100 liters, which is like 25 gallons, it was 25%. And the Multipure executives have told me they've had, depending on which one they buy, they've had it after like 24 gallons, 24 gallons, like getting none. Same with activated alumina. So they vary, but you know, on the first gallon or the first 25 or even 100 gallons of a cartridge is really not what's important. A lot of, you know, mediocre cartridges can perform pretty well on that basis, but what's really important is kind of that back half of your cartridge life and what's really happening at that point. And that's why I think the NSF protocols are key, because they account for that in the gallon capacity that they rate it for. Not only they account for it by testing at a high concentration for everything, but they take the number it passed for and then cut it in half. So layers of redundancy. But yeah, the fluoride thing is tough. Everyone wants a solution. The good news is with the Enagic, if you have one of those, the electrolysis reduction process, a lot of fluoride does go out the acid tube. It can be, I've seen as low as like 40%. And then I haven't seen personally, but I've heard as high as like 75%. So if you get a good like carbon filter, like the Multipures are carbon based, and then you have the electrolysis reduction process, between the two, you can get a good result. Between the two, you can get 2/3, 75%. I've seen people get untraceable with a Multipure and an Enagic. It really just depends. I mean, because fluoride acts like a mineral, it's just not like a regular contaminant where it's predictable. It depends on the water chemistry as far as how it's handled. Other contaminants as well. Lead, for example, you know, when the NSF testing gets tested at 6.5 and 8.5, and it has to pass both because your real world conditions could be anywhere in that range. And the pH affects how well it's absorbed. So fluoride, it's just tough, and you kind of have to do the best you can or go RO, you know.
It's a question that comes up all the time. So thank you for that. And if anybody wants any further clarification, just drop it in the chat. I'm curious. I have a question come in here, and I had the exact same question. So like a lot of us on the call are Enagic representatives. We assist people with ionized water. And the question comes up a lot of times, like, well, why do I need a pre-filter? Like, I'm spending all this money on an ionizer. It has a 3-stage carbon filter. Why do I need a pre-filter? And I've actually assisted people to invest in a unit. And I always bring up the pre-filtration part because I'm very passionate about people have the best water going into the unit. But maybe you can give us your input, like why do we need a pre-filter with the Enagic unit?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's got the internal filter. Let's see, where is the, I gotta move around my Zoom stuff. Where's the, I think we can actually find the listing for Enagic on here. So again, WQA is a legit organization, and it does test, when it has contaminant certifications, it does test to the real NSF standards. Other companies like, you know, Berkey or other companies like that will say tested to NSF 42 or 53 standards, but they're really not, you know. WQA actually does. So you can see what it's tested for, reduction claims, is chlorine, taste, and odor. So that tells you that filters a chlorine, taste, and odor filter. That's in the water industry. That's a type of filter. It's called a CTO. So it's CTO because it's chlorine, taste, and odor. It's designed for a longer capacity for handling those things, not like a shorter capacity for handling harder to remove things. So that's what you get in the Enagic. And it's important because, you know, if you talk to guys in industry that use electrolysis in manufacturing processes, you cannot have chlorine building up on those plates. You know, it's really bad. So that's why this is designed to handle that. But if you want to handle tougher contaminants like heavy metals, volatile organics, especially if your water is disinfected with chlorine or chloramines, the stuff that it disinfects, like the bacteria or the viruses in the water that it kills, reacts with the chlorine and forms what are called disinfection byproducts. And those are really bad for you. They're carcinogenic and they're a lot harder to filter. So that's like a contaminant you want to look for in a pre-filter you use that won't be handled by the Enagic internal filter. And it's not personal towards Enagic. It's just that out of the sphere of water filters that are out there, not that many can actually handle those well because they're tough. Heavy metals as well, tough, you know. So those are some of the reasons why you want a really good pre-filter before your Enagic. But other practical reasons are your machine stays cleaner longer, stuff doesn't build up in it the same way, stuff's not going to build up on the plates, you know, because heavy metals can attach to the plates too over time with that charge. And you just get, like, I haven't had a single person get a Multipure before their Enagic and not just be like, this is so much better. I can't believe I didn't do this before. Like, it tastes so much better. It feels better. Like, there's just that living quality of it's just more, you know. I've seen cases where, and I don't know the reason for this, where it actually helped the separation between the alkaline pH and then the acid pH. Like, the alkaline got more and the acid got more. And I don't know the etiology for that, like why that happens, because theoretically the Multipure should leave the mineral balance unaffected. That's the key with them, is they're about as good as you can get with a filter without removing the minerals. And that's kind of the balance you want. You want as good a filtration you can get with leaving the minerals intact. Otherwise, the Enagic doesn't work. If you want to go RO, that's an option, but you have to remineralize, or else the Enagic doesn't work.
Is that pretty difficult to do? Like, do the RO go in? Because I've heard there's like a delicate balance between the mineral content. You're like bringing the life back into the water before it goes into the machine. Obviously, if you're looking to avoid fluoride altogether, this is the route you would go, correct?
Yeah, and there's other reasons why you would do it in, like, parts of, like, in farm country. Like, I think in Omaha, I was talking to someone where they just had like absurd levels of arsenic. I mean, the Multipure is a model that is NSF certified for pentavalent arsenic, but that's 50 parts per billion, which is 5 times the EPA limit. But then there's situations where you have like 250 parts per billion. And if you have that, you just have to go RO, you know. And there's other things like that, you know. If you had Aaron Brockovich type levels of chromium, you really want to go RO. Probably I would go RO plus like a Multipure afterwards, just to be safe, you know. Yeah, there's situations where RO has a place, you know. Everything I think has its place. RO has a place. It's not the first choice for most people in America, I think. If you remineralize RO, you can get it to work with the Enagic. The challenge is, I haven't seen a situation where a remineralizer both remineralized it well. So generally you see, like, you know, with RO, you're taking the total dissolved solids down to, like, if it's working well, to like 10 or less. And I've seen remineralizers bring it back up to like 30 to 40. And that's kind of like the minimum that you need for the Enagic to work. And then I've seen ones that do more than that. But when they do more than that, then pre-Enagic, they're bringing the RO water's pH up already to like between 9 and 10. So then by the time you ionize it, it's too high in pH, you know, and it's unpleasant. That's the challenge. And there isn't an RO remineralization cartridge I just really love. That product, the wellness filter, years ago, that would have been like the ideal thing. Japanese minerals remineralizing your RO water, right? And they're just not readily available in the US anymore. And they're in Australia, and I've tried to work with them I've actually tried to buy like pallets of that media from that guy, and he wouldn't let me. So yeah, it's tough. It's tough to do RO well. People do it with their Enagic. I know I think Ion Faucet does offer an RO pre-filtration setup. The other thing you run into, and this is just the really annoying thing if you're using an ionizer, because about 30% of your water goes up the acid tube, and because if you invested in an Enagic, you're probably using a lot more water than a regular person, even if they had a good filter. Between those two things, you have an RO with a tank, you're just constantly waiting for that tank to fill back up. You fill up a Kangen bag of water you want to give to one of your friends, and then you go to fill up a pot of water to make your pasta for dinner, and then halfway through that pot, the RO tank runs out, and then you got to wait for it to refill. This is the complaint. I mean, I've had people with Enagic with RO pre-filters switch to a Multipure because of this very thing, the waiting for the water. And then, like, if you want to handle that issue, then you go to like a commercial level RO, and they're getting industrious. in both expense and maintenance. So yeah, it has a place. Sometimes there's no other choice, but it's a serious pain compared to just like a multi-pure, which, and I'm always open to, if there's a better option out there, I'll look into it. But when you look at the Aquaversa or the Aquaperform, I just think for the value, for the quality, they're stainless steel housings, unlike the ion faucet and most of the other stuff out there. People don't realize with the plastic housings, they break down and crack. You have to replace them every few years. The ion faucets are a little cheaper on the front end, but over a 10-year, if you did like a 10-year analysis, not only that you have to replace the housings a few times. I mean, I've been in Enagic people that they tell me like that's such a pain to change the cartridge in those types of housings. They just buy a whole new like housing every time they need a cartridge change, because it's easier. So I think when you look at the 10-year cost and then the quality and the kind of unrivaled performance you get with the multi-pures, which are NSF certified for more contaminants than any other non-RO filter, I just think.
Why don't you, since you're talking about it anyway, why don't you go through some of the data? I mean, maybe some people on the call never heard of Multipure.
Yeah.
This is the solution that I use. I pair this with my Enagic machine. I'm very happy. I've had it since day one, basically. So why don't you explain to us like what makes Multipure so special? Like this will be educational for me too. I'll learn something about the solid block carbon technology.
Yeah, so they're solid carbon blocks. That's right. And that's important because they are compressed into like a uniform pore size. And that pore size on these is about a 0.5 micron. You could have a solid carbon block that looks very similar to this that might have 25 micron pore size, where literally 50 times larger pores that stuff can get through. But they're mixed media carbon blocks. So there's stuff blended in there besides carbon to handle specific contaminants. Like there's specific media for heavy metals and other things they're called scavengers for those specific contaminants. And there's a blend that's a very engineered blend. And the construction of these carbon blocks is not like most of them. This company is the only one I know of in the US that compresses their carbon blocks versus extruding them. And that's getting a little technical with the manufacturing side, but what it really means is you can get more filtration media in there and less stuff that holds that thing together. You get a better media to binder ratio. But you can see the housings are stainless steel. These are the two that are recommended for Enagic: Aquaversa, Aquaperform. You can see they're not our most, this is our cheapest, the Aqua Mini, and this is our most expensive, but really these are the two best options for the Enagic. And most people go for this one because it's the largest and you get the most flow rate from it. Most people on Enagic machines prefer to get a really good flow rate. And the Enagics are capable of that, unlike a lot of other ionizers that can't really deliver good flow rate, no matter how strong the flow is going into them. Enagic is capable of a good flow rate and still getting good ionization. So the Aquaperform, for that reason, is kind of the preference. The Aquaversa that you have, Ted, I have that too.
Oh no, I do have the Aquaperform.
You have the Aquaperform?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Yeah, you can go with either one. There's two differences, really. The difference is obviously you can see the size, and that translates to the flow rate. It's about 50% more media in this block versus that one. So that means more lifespan on the cartridge and more flow rate.
A question came in. How often do you replace that internal filter in there?
So they're rated by gallons. They're rated, this smaller one's rated for 750. This one's actually rated for 600. And the reason is it has an arsenic certification, and arsenic is like the hardest thing for a non-RO to filter out. It uses up the media much faster. So that one certification drags down the number for, even though it filters out everything, it passes all the other tests that the Aquaversa does. If the arsenic certification wasn't on the Aquaperform, that number would be probably like 1100 or 1200. And that means it would have been passed for double that. So what that means for most people is once a year cartridge changes. For Enagic people, that could be once a year or more, depending on kind of, because
how much water you're giving out.
How much water you're giving out, Like, are you just drinking it, or are you every day? Are you making strong acid water to wash your like gymnasium, like or something like that? Or I mean, people tell me this, on the phone. Like I make 10 gallons of acid water every day. I'm like, well, you're gonna have to change it probably every 3 or 4 months. So yeah, so it depends on your usage. Most people once a year. Maybe a healthy balance. If you're kind of a semi-heavy user, it'll be every 6 months or 9 months.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Can you show us just kind of like what it actually removes? Because, I think a lot of people like to see what it's actually taking out of the water.
Yeah. Let's find that.
And then I don't want to keep everybody here super long, but I would like to save some time here at the end if anybody wants to pop out and ask a question. I want this to be an open forum where you can ask anything. You have an industry veteran expert on the line here, and I want you to be able to have the opportunity to ask question. And just, if you want to raise your hand or whatnot, that way I can pop you out and you can ask question.
So yeah, while people are volunteering for that, so we got the chlorine, the chloramines. Chloramines very important because they are, if you don't filter them out, they will be concentrated in the alkaline spout because they're an alkaline contaminant. So you will have more of it in your Kangen water than you had in your tap water beforehand. So very, very important for chloramines. These are a long list. The arsenic is significant. Again, you can see tested at 6.5 and 8.5. And a lot of these are various volatile organic compounds that are carcinogenic. Let's see, we've got halocytic acids are carcinogenic. Disinfection byproducts, here we go with heavy metals, lead. Again, you can see tested at both pHs, has to pass both. Mercury, same thing. This is the hard one. This is an industrial waste product, polychlorinated biphenyls, and just not many. You can see 96.8. That's, most filters cannot come close to passing that test. That's a significant one, as is MTBE. Where's that?
Down a little bit. Right there it is.
Did I miss it?
Yeah, go up a little bit. You just went right past. It's right in the middle, basically. There you
Okay.
go. Down a little bit.
Okay. But yeah, that's a significant one. That's it, additive to gasolines and stuff, gets in the water, very tough to filter. And these are, I'm bringing these ones up because these are ones that most filters can't pass tests for. A lot of the easier stuff. These are the forever chemicals, right?
Yeah.
They're new and they're kind of a buzz right now, but honestly, like they're not that hard. Any kind of mid-grade filter like that one, the ion faucet one can probably pass for that one. They are kind of on the rage right now. Everyone wants to know about them, and the testing quantities for these is bonkers. I talked to the vice president of marketing at Multipure. I mean, we're testing parts per trillion quantities of these things. That it's hard to really fathom how small that is, but that's the testing protocols are in those kinds of quantities. Toxaphene is a I think that's a pesticide. I don't know why I'm a little rusty on the.
There's so much stuff in our water. It's crazy. Here's a question that came in. Someone asked, why not the Aqua Lux? And I would like you to touch on, like, there could be people on this call that are not in Enagic. They're not familiar with that. So perhaps, this is a solution they could be using at their home. There's a full house solution that Multipure offers, or something you put at your sink. Maybe you could touch on that really briefly as well.
Yeah. Before I do, I just want to know there's a bunch of pharmaceuticals on here. I mean, you all know ibuprofen. And there's a bunch of like DEET. We all know that from bug spray, right? So a lot of other kind of this is a category called emerging contaminants that it passes for. Not many filters have these certifications. So that question, why not the Aqua Lux? Let's go back. The Aqua Lux is the same exact block component as the Aqua Perform. The difference is around it is a proprietary technology called nano mesh. It's a microfiber laced with carbon that can get you NSF certified 4-factor virus reduction, so 99.99%, and 6-factor bacteria reduction, 99.9999%. So there's just not many filters in the world that can get that and actually pass the NSF test. Berkey's aren't, and anything like that probably isn't. So that's the benefit of the Aqualux. It's also, you can see it's got a fancier housing. It is easier to change the cartridges. It's got a built-in capacity monitor. It's also about double the price of the AquaPerform. Why not that for an Enagic though? Well, it's closer to the size of the Aquaversa as far as the block size, but because that nano mesh is so fine, and because it's a shorter length like the Aquaversa, it is rated at 3/4 gallon a minute like the Aquaversa, but I was told internally, there's always variance because these are natural products. In real life, it's going to be it's going to err on the side of a slower flow rate than the Aquaversa. And the Aquaversa is already kind of pushing it for an Enagic. It's kind of, you don't want to go any lower than that for flow rate. And it's also twice the cost. And you're electrolyzing the water anyway. And being frank with you, most people, if you're on tap water, you're probably not having viruses live in your water anyway. So it is a cutting edge, top of the market product, but the benefits for people that aren't on wells or aren't on municipal water that has boil alerts constantly, where there's breakouts of organisms in their water. In those cases, the Aqualux is really, really good. In my just frank, honest opinion and all my experience, I think for bang for the buck and quality for the Aquaversa and the AquaPerform, they're just hard to beat. Aquaversa's price is with an installation kit is $500. The AquaPerforms with an installation kit is $635. If you're using an Enagic, you probably need a kit called the John Gets Adapter Kit. That's $15. So you're looking at $515 or $650. And I just think at those prices for the quality, it's like a no-brainer buy, where the Aqualux is like, if you don't care about the price, it's a little better. But I think for the price value combination, the Aquaversa and the AquaPerform are just long time proven and hard to beat.
Great. All right, we got another question from Jill. We're on well water. Any thoughts or any suggestions on a pre-filter or not? We currently have a whole house water softener. What do you think about?
It just depends. I mean, I've seen pristine wells. Most of them are not pristine. You may not need it. You may need it. With a well, if you don't, you might want to get it tested. It might be worth investing in a well test for a couple $100 just to see what you're dealing with, and then and you can handle it. It's hard to know without a test on a well, and a test that you did last year might not be pertinent today because it's variable like that. Certainly no detriment to having one of these on a well, and for being real, probably 80% of the wells I've looked at their tests from would need a pre-filter still. But I mean, I've been in a well. I've been at a guy's house in Oregon on the Mackenzie River where his well water literally tasted like Fiji coming out of the taps. It was unbelievable. And I saw the test and it was all zeros of everything except minerals.
Wow.
So they're out there, but they're few and far between on wells.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, another question here. What about people in areas that have potable water? What pre-filter would be required?
Potable water would be like municipally treated water that's disinfected.
Yeah, I don't know. Howard, it's a question from Howard. Howard, you want to pop out and clarify? Hey, are you there? Let's see. Howard, going once, going twice. I got lots of questions in here. You guys are welcome to raise your hand. You can pop out, join us on camera here. I'm going to move on, Howard, if you want to drop another message or open up your mic. Friend messaged me that her spring water has total alkalinity of 500 with a negative sign. I have no clue what this means. She's
that means hard is what that means.
What does it mean?
It means it's got a lot of minerals in the water. It's hard water.
Okay. She's looking to, the rest of her water quality was good, but she's looking to add a Kangen machine. What are your thoughts?
You'll have to try it. It's weird with electrolysis. It's like, if you have no minerals, it doesn't work. And then there's a buffer where if you have too much minerals, it doesn't work either. And I don't know what that upper limit is. So you'd have to try it. I would suggest, before she buys one, maybe bringing yours over her house and seeing if you're getting, and bring the reagent drops if you're getting alkaline and acid separation and they're not both looking neutral, then it's working and she's probably good to get one.
So Elena asked, where do we find that PDF of the contaminants?
You go, so if you're on the site, let me move my Zoom stuff out of the way. If you're on the site, you go to, that's the store. So you go to the main site, and I know it's got this loading thing. You go to the product page, learn more. And then on the right, you have a tab that says documents. It's got the user guide, install guide, but you're looking for the performance data, and each of the different products has one.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, this comes up a lot. This is what's in the chat here, is just people that are using like wells or groundwater and stuff like that. So is it just like the blanket statement, basically like people need to get their wells tested? Because it's like some people think they have like the greatest well water in the world, but they don't really know, right? Until they get it tested.
Well, they think that because there's no chlorine in it, and compared to taking a shower in the water with chlorine, it feels pretty awesome in comparison.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean there isn't other stuff in it. You know, if it was me moving today to a new house on a well, I'm just getting, I mean, I already have one, but I would be getting a Multipure just by default, because it's not hurting anything, you know, even if the water is pristine, but it's going to give me the best chance of getting anything that might be in that water out. And if I had concerns above that, I would get a test. And the wells are where you can get stuff that the Multipure doesn't handle. Like, again, arsenic in absurd quantities, or nitrates in absurd quantities, or chromium in absurd quantities. All these things in kind of normal, typical qualities are really not a concern, and kind of handled well. But you know, when you get to absurd qualities, that tends to happen when it does happen on wells.
Mhm.
So if I had, and normally people know, you know, normally like the area water authority has, it's just known that in certain areas there's high levels of nitrates or something, and so they offer testing a lot of times discounted. But my default would be just getting a Multipure on a well, and but if I had any concerns beyond that, I would get testing. That's just would be my general thinking on the matter, you know.
Question came in: if we get water tested, how can we understand the readings? Are those understandable by a layperson? That's a great question.
Yeah, they're pretty understandable. They look a lot like that PDF document we just looked at. You know, you'll have a list of content. They look a little bit more kind of left brainy, not as well laid out as this, but you have a list of stuff on the left, and then you'll have percentage reductions on the right. Usually you'll have like list of stuff on the left, and then the concentrations in like, you don't have it on this one, but you would have the unit amount, like, you know, points or in parts per million or something of those things. And then you would have, yeah, that's what you would have. You're not testing a filter, so you're not going to have percent removal. So you'd have the contaminant and then a concentration. Generally, they are pretty to understand, with some exceptions.
I think Howard is back. Howard, if you want to open up your mic and open up your camera, ask us your question directly. That would be helpful as we wrap up here. You there? Any other questions before we wrap up? I'll give Howard a second here, but so how do people get in touch with you? Like, I'm sure people, you know, look, you've been a great help to me in my experience, like learning about filtration, and you've always been very available, answered all my questions. You're an awesome guy. I can't thank you enough. How do people get in touch with you if they want, you know, maybe they want more information, maybe they want to learn more about Multipure? I know this is just like a brief introduction. People probably have more questions. How best can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'll put my email in here on the chat box. You can always email me. Ted, like, you know, you like me are a Multipure distributor. This is, you know, not, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this to buy them or anything. But if anyone was interested in Multipure, you can email me and I'll help you get what you need. And it'll go through Ted, so he gets the credit for it. Because that's really what's appropriate here. And there is a coupon available if you reach out to me or Ted for 5% off your purchase. That's just, they're like Enagic. They don't do much as far as discounts, but that's what they offer. But you can email me or get in touch with Ted and get you taken care of if you were interested in the Multipure.
There's also Elena's on the call here too, and she's a rep as well. So if Elena, if you were invited, that's who invited you. I mean, I'm happy to help you and give, you know, the sale to Elena, but I'm just I want to be full transparency here. So, I'm here to as a resource and help everybody. If there's any questions you have, reach out to whoever invited you. I'm just offering Joseph as like a resource. I don't want to like blow up your inbox, but if people have questions, basically, they can still reach out to you. So Howard's microphone is not working. Okay, so let me see. There's one more question here. What is the best filter if we're worried about bacteria and boil orders?
Then that is the Aqualux, and really, honestly, the only one I can, in good conscience, recommend. Like a Berkey, I'm not taking my chances in those situations. The Aqualux is NSF certified for virus and bacteria. There's only a couple filters that have that certification. The other ones I've seen that have it are not like certified for all the other stuff. Like they just do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the answer on that one.
All right, cool. Let's
Will it
see.
work with the KA? Yeah, you would. Yeah, you'd have to reach out to me, and I'd have to help you find an adapter, because the connection points are hard fit into that housing, and it is a 1/4 inch output, and the Enagic inlet hose is a 3/8 inch. So we need to get you like a reducer stem to make that John Guest adapter kit work for the Enagic. So the short answer is yes, it can be done. It is a little more convoluted, but it can be done.
Jill wanted to know, can you use any of these filters on a Berkey?
No. They're plumbed in. They need pressure to really work well. Honestly, every filter I've ever seen that I really like operates under a pressurized setting. The gravity filters, I just haven't seen one I really like. Yeah, I know, Jill. It's like everyone. They're convenient, and they're just so easy. If you're renting, especially,
Yeah.
use a gravity filter. But yeah, I just haven't seen one I like, and the Multipures don't work, unfortunately.
I think what amazed me when I first discovered Multipure was I'm so used to things being like multi-stages, right? That it goes through one filter and then it goes through another and goes through another, and like mentally you feel better, like it went through all these stages. And then when I got the Multipure, it's just one. Does that come up at all? People ask you that, or is that something that maybe you can address?
I don't think people ask it that much, but psychologically, I think it's a thing. A lot of people have that same thought, because you think more stages is better, but it's like, if you do 12 stages of various types of sand, it's still sand, it's like, the other thing you get, the more stages you have is there's more risk for cross contamination. So you can have bacteria breakouts in the cartridges. That's part of the reason why the Multipures are stainless steel. The other reason is those housings are warranted for life, so they don't ever break. The only things I've ever seen wear out are the O-rings, which are cheap to replace, or if people over tighten the ports. But I've never seen that these stainless steel housings fundamentally fail. So it's just a proven. It's when I've looked, Multipure has other divisions too. They have an industrial side. They do manufacturing. They have a plant in China. They make products for they have the Aqualux actually came from a product they developed for the military called the water box, and it's really cool. I mean, I've seen a video where the guy takes his water box, which is basically like Aqualux, except it's got the cartridges separated. It's got the nano mesh cartridges and then the kind of Aqua Perform cartridge after it. But he throws that in a putrid like water processing facility, like fecal matter, viruses, heavy metals in that water. It's gross. Throws a hose in, puts it through the water box, and then takes a drink right out of it, in real time with no wastewater like RO. That is where the Aqualux came from, is that technology. So that large diameter, 4.5 inch diameter, compressed multimedia solid carbon block with 0.5 micron pore sizes is just really proven and really effective. And there's really no reason for anything else, under normal circumstances.
Awesome. Well, hey, we're at the top of the hour. I don't want to keep everybody here all night. This is a fascinating conversation, Joseph. You're a wealth of knowledge when it comes to filtration. Does anybody have any last questions or anything? Howard found another microphone. So if you want to, Howard, if you want to try to pop out, we're happy to take your question. For anybody that's still on the call, hey, Howard, are you there?
Yes, I'm here now.
Yeah. You want to ask your question real quick?
Okay. Yeah, I was just asking. Friends of mine are moving to a new area out of town where we usually live, and they're going to an area that has potable water. And I'm wondering,
What do you
what
mean by potable water? What does that mean?
that's the part I don't, that's what they told me, is that it's potable water. So they don't drink it, but they use it for every other thing except drinking it. That's the only thing I know.
Potable water generally means that you can drink it. I'm wondering if they're talking about like in a water recycling system, like gray water, which would be like the water you wash your clothes with or wash your dishes with, where it's not drinkable, but you can like use it in your garden. It could also mean it's rainwater collection, where it's collected rainwater that's, you know, safe to drink when it's fresh, you know, out of the sky, but when it sits in a tank for some days, it might not be, you know, safe anymore. So I don't know exactly what they mean.
Okay.
But if there is any concern about bacteria growth, the Aqualux would be, you know, the sure bet. It is an expensive sure bet, but it's a sure bet. But I would really kind of have to talk to them to understand exactly what they're saying to answer that question.
Okay, thank you very much.
Well, thank
Thank
you,
you.
Howard. Let's wrap it up here. So if you're interested in learning more or investing in a unit for your Kangen machine or for just to have at home, you reach out to whoever invited you tonight. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out to Joseph or myself. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. This is like, I'm taking on all this stuff too. I'm learning. I'm always learning. Water is fascinating. Joseph obviously been at this for a very long time. So thank you again, Joseph, for your time and for your expertise. And it's always a pleasure to connect with you. And I enjoy. I just want to thank everybody for being here. We've been talking water and hydration for an hour. So thank you so much. This recording will go out to everybody who registered. And I'm going to leave it there. Joseph, any last words?
Yeah, you know, I know when you're in the Enagic business, the stuff beyond filtration that the Enagic does and how that changed people's lives is very exciting. The alkalizing of the water, the hydrogen content, and then mostly the benefits people get is just, it just fills you up with excitement, right? You know, sometimes in life, people go through a hard time. And, you know, when I talk to them, if they're in a funk and they're getting a little depressed, maybe they're dealing with a transition in life. And I talk to them and you start asking them the basic questions like, are you eating meals 3 times a day? Are you going for a walk outside every day? Are you drinking enough water every day? Are you taking good vitamins? Are you kind of keeping your attitude up the best you can? And you go through all the fundamentals. And usually most people I talk to, when they're going through a tough time and they're feeling depressed, they're lapsing on all the fundamentals, you know? And when it comes to water, like filtration is the fundamental, and it's not as sexy as, you know, the electrolysis reduction process and alkalizing and hydrogen, but it's fundamental, you know? So start with the fundamentals and then work from there is my general thinking towards water when you're looking at making it more of a living state. You know, just don't neglect the fundamentals. I think it's really important. And it's something that's overlooked a lot, but you'll end up better off. You might not notice it on day one, just like you don't notice it if you start walking every day. You don't know, you might not notice it for a while, like how your life improves, but it's making a difference whether you realize it or not right away. And you know, it's accumulation over the years. It's one of those fundamentals. So just something to think about as it pertains if you're in the Enagic business.
That's wonderful. Great way to end, especially in what we're all dealing with in life right now, right? Keep it simple. Practice the fundamentals. I mean, look, we're all in the health space in one way or another. If we're on this call, we're invested in our health, and you know, we're just so thankful and grateful to have you all here. You know, be invested in healthy water, get outside, move your body, have a higher connection to our purpose, and to just give thanks and grace for our beautiful, abundant lives. So what a great way to end the call, Joseph. And like I said, thank you so much for your time. Thank you everybody for joining us. And if you have any questions, you want some more clarification, you want some more notes or any kind of, you know, more science or deeper dive on any of this stuff, just reach out to myself or Joseph. Or Elena also just bought her unit. So congratulations to Elena. And yeah, we'll leave it there. And I'll say goodnight. Thanks again.
Thank you guys. Good time tonight.